how's it going? It's definitely been a minute since my last upload, and let's just say that medical issues and breakups don't go well together. But given that I've had some time on my hands, there was one thing I felt like I had to talk about. That being the absolute resurgence of the comic book industry, pun intended. Recently, American superhero comics, mainly DC, have been skyrocketing in popularity and sales, spearheaded by the new Absolute line of series. Absolute Batman in particular has been selling gangbusters, to the point of which second printings for issues are being sold out before the first printing of those issues has even gone on sale in the first place. It's frankly incredible to watch this medium getting so much attention. The team over at DC have been putting out some incredible work that has kept me on the edge of my seat, sometimes even reading spoilers on the internet from leaks like it's prime JJK. The big thing that these series have done, which is garnering more and more attention for doing the thing that has made manga so much more successful and getting new readers on board, has been fixing the joke that's been made 1,000 times. Where do I start reading? Because while most series the answer would simply be chapter 1, superhero comics have been continuously telling the same stories for almost a century at this point. So things are just a little more complicated with that much material to cover. But with Absolute Batman, I just tell people that there's only like 20 chapters out right now, so you only have to read those 20 chapters. And that's what got me thinking, hey, I know how good the mainline continuity of DC is, so why the hell can't we just have a simple reading order for that? One that cuts out the most fat possible to fast track people into this universe, the one that I've loved since childhood and that more and more people are looking to discover now. So that's what I've done. I've poured over the mainline continuity of DC Comics in order to make a list of just 12 stories to read to get up to date in the wider DC Comics storyline. Now, that may sound like a lot, but luckily for me, DC, in a bit of a contrast to Marvel with their storylines, tends to follow one specific story for all of its big moments over the years, a story that many fans will already know as the Crisis storyline. Whenever a big moment in the wider continuity is going to happen, it's classified as a crisis event. Then you know that both some shit is going to go down and it'll be building some way or another off the main concepts that fuel the entire DCU. Just before I get to the first story on our 12-step program, I do want to highly recommend one extra one for those who are either new to superhero comics or just want to get more immersed in the style of world that you'll be diving into shortly, as it works as a superb kind of pilot episode for the DCU as a whole. That story is Darwin Cook's seminal classic DC The New Frontier, a 6-chapter look into the transition period of one generation of characters to the next during the late 50s and early 60s. It's heavily based on early stories that brought about DC's Silver Age, and it contextualizes them within the historical period at the time. I cannot recommend it enough, so I'll be including it as a little episode 0 on our list, as it technically isn't canon. The first proper entry on our list, though, is Crisis on Infinite Earths by writer Marv Wolfman and artist George Perez from 1985. You might recognize the creative team from their run on Teen Titans, which heavily inspired the storyline of the 2000s TV show. So if you're a fan of that series, you might love this too. You also might be wondering why we're starting our story with DC's 50th anniversary event, but this 12-issue series manages to seamlessly incorporate all of the storytelling done in that half century to use it as the basis for what is often considered to be one of the best and most important comics of all time. The premise is simple. An all-consuming wall of pure antimatter has begun devouring entire universes, and so the mysterious being known only as the Monitor decides to summon the greatest champions of the remaining worlds in order to somehow save everything. The tagline of the event will echo for pretty much every entry on our list. Worlds will live, worlds will die, and nothing will ever be the same. By the way, you can get both The New Frontier and Crisis on Infinite Earths in DC's new Compact Comics format, which collects each story in a more manga-sized format for only $10 per. Not every entry on this list will be in this format, but I can guarantee that with the way that they've been putting out more and more of them, it won't be long before you can grab most of these stories in that format. Moving on to our second entry, we'll be jumping forward to our previous story's official sequel, Infinite Crisis by writer Jeff Johns and artist Phil Jimenez, published in 2005. I should mention that while we are jumping 20 years in order to maintain consistency and the brevity of this list, there are some amazing stories between these two works that you should absolutely feel free to check out, such as 0 Hour Crisis in Time and the JLA and Seven Soldiers runs written by Grant Morrison, which will introduce concepts that they'll use when writing later entries on our list. Infinite Crisis, however, is considered the direct follow-up to Crisis on Infinite Earths, and picks up at a time where things seem completely bleak and hopeless in the DCU, and the characters are at their breaking points when certain figures thought lost forever return with an offer to fix things. Following the end of that story, DC decided to give every one of their series a 1 year time skip and tell what happened in that missing year in real time with our third story, 52. Written by the four-person all-star team of Jeff Johns, Grant Morrison, Greg Rucka, and Mark Waid, and with layouts by Keith Giffen, I personally considered 52 to be the single best series that DC has ever put out. Like I said, this series tells the story of a missing year in DC continuity following Infinite Crisis, but it decides to follow characters often considered minor in the lore, but who have gained mass following since, like Booster Gold, Animal Man of the Question. At number 4, we have Final Crisis, which was originally billed as, well, the Final Crisis storyline. It asks the question of what happens when the bad guys win, as Darkseid, the cosmic deity of literal evil, finally achieves complete control over reality. Following that, we have The Flash Rebirth and its follow-up Flashpoint, both written by Jeff Johns and drawn by Ethan Van Sciver and Andy Kubert, respectively. I'm considering these part 1 and 2 of a singular story, which will make sense to those who have read them. And The Flash has long been a central figure at the forefront of DC's cosmic lore, as the first person to discover the multiverse. And in this storyline, he's tested in ways that he's never been before when his most hated enemy returns, with a plan that will alter the DCU forever. Now, at number 6, we have The Multiversity, written by Grant Morrison and drawn by multiple guest artists each issue. Now, this is a really interesting story. It's framed as multiple single issues, each in different DC universes within their multiverse, and it's bookended by 2 chapters about a fight that transcends all of them. Now, to say anything more might ruin the experience, and some of these chapters in this work, they still stick out to me in my mind as completely unforgettable. At number 7, we have DCU Rebirth, which is a short story by Jeff Johns and Ethan Van Sciver about Legacy that back in 2016 had the entire industry jaw-dropping with its final reveal. At number 8, we have Dark Knight's Metal by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo. Now, this is a fantastic storyline that builds off of their previous Batman run, which feel free to absolutely check out. It is wonderful, but you don't need to know any of that to enjoy this storyline. It really just asks the question of Batman, he's that guy who always has a plan for everything. What happens when he delves into something that was slightly too big even for him? It's wonderful. It delves into that concept that I think only comic books can do, of building off so much collective lore that these series have built up over the years, and yet you don't really need to know anything other than this pure story that just goes completely balls to the wall crazy, and it's so enjoyable. At number 9, we have Doomsday Clock by Jeff Johns and Gary Frank. Now, this might be a little bit more of a controversial pick for those who know a bit more about the series, as there's some people who just do not like this series just in principle. And I completely can understand that, but personally, I think for the DCU, not only is this lore-wise one of the most important ones, but also just, I think the message that it gets across is really nice and very poignant for today. This acts as a kind of sequel to DCU Rebirth, as well as one other story that, if you're a comic book fan, you might have read before, called Watchmen. Now, you don't really need to have read Watchmen for the purposes of this story, but if you want to read it before this, please do. It's fantastic. Coming in at number 10, we have Scott Snyder's Justice League run, which culminated in the event Dark Knight's Death Metal with the returning artist of Greg Capullo from Dark Knight's Metal. Now, this is going to be a bit of a longer one in our list, purely because this is a longer story. It's the entirety of Scott Snyder's run on Justice League, which then had Dark Knight's Death Metal as the final boom, this is the ending of it. And I adore this run. This is a perfect place to jump on. Scott Snyder is obviously also the one spearheading the current Absolute series, and it really shows just how much he learned over the years in writing these series. Following that, at number 11, we have what people have taken to calling the Dark Crisis trilogy. It consists of 3 shorter stories, each about 7 or 8 issues. We've got Infinite Frontier, Justice League Incarnate, and then Dark Crisis, all of which were written by Joshua Williamson and then illustrated by multiple different people. And then finally, at number 12, we have the current stuff that's going on in the line. DC's All-In Special and DC KO. This is literally published this year as I'm making this video. So, yeah, congratulations, you're up to date on DC lore. I'm pretty proud of myself for containing all this within 12 stories. But if your favorite got left out or missed, odds are I did look at it and know it very well. I just, had to cut it for simplicity's sake, and I hope that you can like agree with like, hey, if you're gonna have just 12 stories, yeah, this isn't completely necessary, but it's still fantastic. And of course, if there's a character that you're looking at during all this and you go, oh, I want to learn more about them, please read their stuff. There is a century of these characters, and so much of it is so worth reading. But yeah, I feel confident saying that if you read just these 12 stories plus that little extra pilot episode if you want, I feel very confident saying you will understand DC lore, not to a T, but like as if you're watching like a TV series and you're like, oh yeah, I know what this season inside and out. This, of course, brings us to the current absolute stuff, which you don't need to know any of that for, but it's still absolutely worth your time, no pun intended. I just realized I said that. The absolute lines are just, they're taking up all of my free time reading them, and I cannot recommend them enough. Absolute Batman is just generational with how much it's transforming the industry. Martian Manhunter is one of the best things I've ever read. It's so good. Wonder Woman has made me love that character even more. Superman, I wasn't totally on board with, but suddenly it's really hitting its flow and I'm loving it a lot. Flash is a bit slower, ironically, to get started, but I'm really liking it. Green Lantern feels like this prestige format TV where like you're peeling apart layers of a mystery before you really get started. It's really cool. And Green Arrow just got started along with Catwoman, which is going to start, I believe, next month for me. I'm really like the first issue of Green Arrow. It's very cool. Maybe I'll make a video sometime soon, giving my own personal reading order for the absolute stuff, but just please pick a book, dive in. It's so much fun. The only other thing I'll say is that, like I said, if you see stuff that you're reading in between these and you're just like, I want to pick that up, please do. Some of these great series that I would recommend in between would be in between Crisis and Infinite Crisis. I would recommend a lot of the early Grant Morrison stuff, like Animal Man. That'll make a lot of stuff in Final Crisis make a lot more sense. We got their JLA run too. It's freaking phenomenal. Identity Crisis isn't my favorite, but it will inform a lot more of what's going on, but it's not completely necessary. After 52, please pick up Booster Gold. I love that character to death. Probably one of my favorite characters in all of fiction. And that is just a fantastic storyline. Like I mentioned earlier, the Snyder Capullo Batman run is great. And just so many of these series also are, like I said earlier, are being compiled in this new DC compact comic format. They're $10 each. They're so good. I love having them on my shelf. You could probably get them in like your local bookstore or airport. They're so good. Please feel free to just grab them. As you can tell, this is a bit more of an unscripted video. I've stumbled over my words so many more times than you can count, and I've cut them out. But I really wanted to talk about this because DC was something I grew up with so much, and I see more people getting into it. I'm like, please, I love this stuff. Just experience it. But yeah, I'm probably gonna have right now on screen my little 12-step program. This is just my personalized reading order. If you, like I've been saying, if you want to add more stuff, please do. I'm sure you've got friends who also read this stuff. Just go to them. So many people, even at your local comic book store, people want to talk about this stuff because it's been getting so many more people in. Please just go to your store, go to a bookstore, just talk to people. It's fun. But with that, I'm going to end this video, and I hope that this is a good order for people to not only get into this mainline universe, but really enjoy it and feel like they're like experiencing this century of work in a seamless way that they don't feel overwhelmed by. And I hope I've been able to do that. I really hope you've enjoyed this video. I'm going to try to get back more into making stuff. Probably there'll be a bit more of these unscripted kind of just yapping about stuff I love sort of thing, but I do want to have more of those tightly scripted works where I just talk about like these things that I do love and that I could do more essay stuff on. But for now, I'm going to call it there, and I just hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope you have a good one.